So our next topic is one that Finn is going to be very happy to talk about because he was talking about Judy Bagwell and her great tag team title reign the other week. Obviously, in jest, Judy had unfortunately passed away, but Buff Bagwell's in the news because he talked about when he was let go after the horrible match in 2001 with Booker T. He said on the Cheap Heat podcast this week about coming back to WWE. I even offered Laurinaitis when he was running things. I offered him, I said, look, bring me in for a month, bring me in for 2 weeks, bring me in for a week. Whatever you want to decide to bring me in for, bring me in for it, and I'll wrestle for free. Pay for my transport, but I'll wrestle for free. That's how desperate Buff was, Finn, to get back into the WWF after the debacle that was the Tacoma Raw main event with Booker T and Buff Bagwell. Do you think, Finn, if he had come back and wrestled free for 2 weeks, do you think he would have got hired?
Well, hold on a minute. John Laurinaitis wasn't promoted to the top job in talent until 2004, was it? That's when he replaced Jim Ross. But John Laurinaitis was working as a subordinate to Jim Ross, so I guess he could have recommended that Buff Bagwell be hired in 2002, 2003, or later in 2001 even, after he'd lost his job. But I mean, as far as the difference he would have made, it just wasn't going to work. He had too much heat on him. The talent didn't like him. They didn't want him around. They didn't want to work with him. It's like that famous story when the Rockers came into WWF the first time and they were fired after, I think, was it 1 day or was it 2 days? It was either 1 or 2 days they lost the jobs. And Michaels, I remember him writing this in his autobiography, and he said, listen, the talent, there's so much heat on you, the talent don't want you here. You just need to go away and then come back. With Buff Bagwell, he went away and he never came back. And I think that tells us all we need to know, Kenny. If it's going to happen, it would have happened. And, Bagwell was a guy who in WCW was viewed as really arrogant, conceited. He just thought he was he thought he was God's gift to pro wrestling. A lot of people thought that he wouldn't be hired by WWF. They're like, there's no way they're going to give this guy a chance. He's got too much baggage. And then they gave him a shot. And Bagwell lived down to expectations. So to me, he was the sort of guy that was only ever going to receive one chance. Because he had a lot of people, there was a lot of naysayers, a lot of people who, just really were just in disbelief that he was hired in the first place in 2001, given his track record in WCW. And then he essentially did all the things, or was the person that everyone said he was. And when he was sent packing after a very short period of time, I think most people were just glad to see the back of him. So I understand why he wasn't rehired. Even if, Kenny, even if Buff Bagwell had offered to pay WWF to rehire him, I don't think it would have happened. I think they were just like, listen, we're giving you your shot. It didn't work. We hope you can find gainful employment elsewhere, but we are not going to give you another shot. You had your shot, you blew it, and that's it. That's my take on it. What do you think, Kenny?
Well, I think that I think Buff Bagwell did have one shot. He wasn't going to get any more. I always liked his character, so I think if he had come back in 2001 at some point, he could be a fun, lower card character, but definitely not any more than that. And you're right, he had a lot of heat, so he had to prove himself. And it probably didn't help that Judy was if he'd come back, Judy would have phoned the office again. She would have called Laurinaitis, and then it would have been back to that.
I understand it, Kenny. No one was getting any work done. All they were doing was taking calls from Judy. They're like, Judy, listen, I've got to go. I've got a wrestling company to run here. Judy's on the phone every 5 minutes. No one could get any work done.
Listen, they should have brought her in to run WCW. She could have done a better job. But yeah, Buff Bagwell, he thought he was going to have a chance to come back if he wrestled for free. But even for free, they didn't want to give him a chance, which
look at the state WWE is in today. They're only going to gross $1 billion this year. They're only going to make a profit of about $100 million. It's like, if they'd rehired Buff, just think where they could be now.
Just like, even Saunders in the comments saying that she's grateful that he didn't come back, so we don't need to watch him again on Retro ITR, which I second. if the Tacoma Dome performance was anything. But, maybe if they'd just given him another chance, maybe he could have done more than that awful Booker T match.